Ria and welcome to this podcast. As you know, marketing is an ever-evolving industry. With that in mind, I've started this podcast so we can talk about new and creative ways of running marketing channels as well as forming strategies. Be it branding, digital ads, influencers, social media, SEO, and lots more. Consider this like a friendly chat with a colleague where you learn from each other's experiences and insights. So, let's explore together what's next in marketing. We have a very special guest with us. He is currently the managing director at Dentsu Singapore. Before this, he was also one of the founding members of the Happy Marketer, where he spent a decade building the business up to one of the best digital marketing firms in India. Outside of work, he loves cricket and loves parenting his 3-year-old adorable toddler. So, please welcome Prantik Mazumdar.
Thank you so much, Ria. It's so exciting to be, on this podcast. I've seen the last few episodes. It's amazing what you're doing. I think to spread the importance of marketing in our world, not just in the corporate world, but also, I think there's so much of good and that a power of marketing can bring to the industry and society at large. So very enterprising to see, someone like you, do this. So thank you for having me.
Thank you so much. That's very encouraging to hear. And I definitely feel the same. Like marketing is not limited to just the marketing industry, but like countries are run by people who are very good marketers. We'll move on to the $1 billion question. So what do you think is next in marketing?
A lot of marketers tend to focus on on just the creative side, on just the art. And I think when you ask me what is the next in marketing, I think the top line message is I think we need to infuse a lot more data and science to the art of marketing. And I must qualify as a digital practitioner that creativity is all the more important today. In today's world where marketing is democratized thanks to technology and digital, creativity is in fact even more important.
Mhm.
But so I talk about three things as to what I genuinely believe is the next element as to what will make marketing, a success. So at the core, the headline is that as marketers, as marketing professionals, we need to elevate the conversation of marketing in the boardroom, one that is perceived to be a cost center to one that is actually driving growth. So we need to prove to the CEO and the CFO and the board that, hey, look, you can't just afford to chop off marketing. Every time there's a crisis or even otherwise, because marketing is a lever, is an interesting and an important lever that can help you drive growth. And by growth, I mean revenue and profit. And I think there are companies that have proven that you can do that. And I hope, the same tools and techniques can be used by more marketers. So that's the headline message as to what's next in marketing, that hopefully we go from cost center to a driver and a lever of growth. And to do that, there are three things that are quite important to us, as a marketing community, and something we talk to our customers as Happy Marketer and Merkle and Dentsu today. Is number one, I think we need to figure out how do we collect and use more first-party data to make our creatives, our messaging, and our media buying more personalized. So the goal is to drive more personalization, but the means to that end is to be able to collect and use first-party data. And for the audience who may or may not be familiar with first-party data, it's again, I think one of the things in our industry which needs to change is the usage of buzzwords. I mean, first-party data is nothing but essentially, email IDs, mobile numbers, along with, your first and last names, collected in a legal manner. I think I must stress that because with the advent of CCPA in the US, GDPR, potentially India coming up with its new data protection laws, I think we also need to be very sincere that we need to be collecting first-party information about our customers and prospects in a legal-friendly manner with permission to be able to reach out to them through their preferred channels. And once we have that first-party data and preferential data, I think that's where marketers who are in the field of creatives and in the fields of media planning, it's a chance for them to come together, use and harness that data to ensure that if they're selling a same product to you and me, if we are the target audience, the way they reach out to you and the message that they use to convince you to buy should be personalized and different from the message and the channel that they use to convince me. So the product could be a fan or a laptop, but your use case is likely to be very different as opposed to mine. So I think that's the first bucket, is how do we drive more personalization in our brand storytelling using first party data. The next is again connected, is how do marketers become better storytellers through better measurement, attribution, and visualization. And I think all these three elements of measurement, attribution, and data visualization are connected, and they can help a marketer become a better storyteller. And what do I mean by this, right? So I'll give you a classic case of point, right? Classic example, we worked with a large bank and a large insurance brand, in the region. And for the longest time, they did not know what does success mean. So they've been spending millions of dollars on ads, on messages, on campaigns, and they didn't know. How do I define what is success? Are we measuring clicks? Are we measuring impressions? Or can we at all measure revenue? And then when we came in and helped them define what success is, and then put in certain tools and systems in place, today, A, we are able to measure the efficacy of each channel, whether it's digital or offline. B, we're able to also do multi-touch attribution. And that's a game changer. For the longest time, a lot of marketers have fallen prey to the principles of last click attribution, where they focus on, for example, oh, someone clicked on this Facebook ad and came to my website and signed up for this credit card. So all the credit goes to the Facebook ad. And suddenly you've forgotten the content marketing, the SEO, or the ads that you ran at the airport. But with machine learning based multi-touch attribution models, and these technology, they have existed for a while. The models have existed. It's a question of putting mind to matter and implementing those. And so our goal as consultants or marketers is allow us to use these platforms and models to let the technology give some weighted scores to the different channels in the customer journey. And when we did this for the bank and the insurance brand, we realized that, wow, contrary to what we had thought, SEO had a huge impact. Or even the brand campaign where the ads were run on billboards and bus stops, they had a great impact right at the top of the funnel. So suddenly what happens is, not only are you able to measure that, hey, when I spent $100 on AdWords and $100 on SEO, what was the return? Also, where is the attribution of success and failure? Because this is going to help you do your zero-based budgeting next year. So that your next year's budget is not a function of gut feeling or a planner's gut feeling what he or she has read, but actually based on attribution data. So measurement, attribution, and the third is the magical tool of data visualization, which I really think can help marketing. And if I connect it to the initial goal of helping marketers elevate the conversation in the boardroom, I have personally seen a lot of successful marketers in the FMCG world, in the banking insurance world, use data visualization tools like Tableau, Datorama, Google Data Studio, so on and so forth, to use real-time dashboards, use them in the boardroom to tell better stories. And I can give you an example. One of large FMCG companies, one of the first things the marketers, the CMO did was she installed a very large 6-screen television in the CEO's office. Why? Because by planting those dashboards in front of the CEO, she did two things. She won his trust because she said, hey, look, you don't have to wait for PowerPoint and Excel sheet reports from me. You can see live dashboards in front of you. So you certainly build trust and credibility. Number two, she said the biggest magic was not the numbers and the fancy graphs, but the fact that every board meeting thereafter began with the numbers. And we all looked at the same numbers and the same facts, and then we debated, right? So it kind of helped bring everyone on the same page. And that was one way this particular CMO from this very large FMCG company that we serve, she could elevate her position as a marketer and also the team, the marketing team, that wow, that they are driving real-time conversations based on facts and numbers, which are beautifully visualized. So the second point is, hopefully we marketers can elevate the conversation in the boardroom through better measurement, fact-checking, attribution, and better storytelling through data visualization. And the third, it's probably a bit futuristic, but I think it's important to keep a look out for what's in it, as you said, right? What's next? And I must say, next is such a relative term because next is always relative to where we are today.
Yeah.
So the point one of first party data personalization, I think a lot of FMCG companies, a lot of telcos and banks today, they are kind of beginning to get on that journey. The element of measurement attribution, I think again, is, I would say, step number two. Once you have solved for problem one, step number two, that's next level of maturity. The third, like I said, is a bit more futuristic, but a lot more digital native companies are already doing this. And by digital natives, I mean the fintechs, the ride-hailing companies, the Grabs and the Ubers of the world, Olas, Zomatos, so on and so forth, where they are using cloud-based technology to be able to do predictive analytics. And this is a massive game changer for us marketers. And I'll give you a few real case studies that we are working on, where typically analytics has been about a rear view mirror, where you look back in hindsight. And based on hindsight, you plan the future. But with cloud-based, machine learning-based algorithms, today, for example, we are helping a telecom operator on a few use cases like predicting churn. So if you have 100 customers, the machine can tell you that, hey, these 5 customers are very likely to leave you in the next 120 days. So you have a choice. Either fine, let them leave, I care less, or you connect your predictive analytics systems with your media buying platforms so that media planners and the creative guys can create promos and offers to show some extra love to these people who are likely to leave my business and win them back.
Right.
The next is you can have another audience basket where to say, hey, these 20 people are my brand champions. What can you do? A, stop wasting your promotions on them. Because if they're your champions, why waste money on them anyway? They're going to buy from you anyway. So you save money, but maybe you can use better messaging and you can use money to basically say, hey, would you like to be my influencer? Would you like to be my advocate? Or maybe I want to enroll you on a VIP program, right? Mm-hmm. So you can use the same money, either save it or use the same money to show love and respect and, appreciation for your champion customers in a different way. But all of this is powered by predictive analytics, where not only is it able to segment my audiences into different buckets, but it's able to predict their behavior based on maybe hundreds of parameters that they're studying. For example, for a ride-hailing company, we used predictive modeling to help the ride-hailing company predict which of its lakhs of drivers are likely to have likely to have an accident in the near future, and hence, please buy insurance for those set of drivers. So not only are you taking care for the drivers, it's a good business practice, because obviously you don't want your cars to get into an accident because it's bad PR, it's not safe, etc., etc. So the use cases that you can solve for with prediction is massive, and it goes slightly beyond the realm of marketing. And that is also something I would like to conclude. This segment is. It is important for marketers to not just elevate the conversation, but also expand the scope of their role. The 2 summary messages from my side in terms of what's next is A, use those 3 points to elevate the conversation of marketing in the boardroom to drive better efficiency and effectiveness by becoming and by using data, first party data to drive personalization, by using measurement, attribution, and visualization to tell better stories. And lastly, to use predictive capabilities on the cloud to hopefully solve for problems which are greater and more impactful than traditional marketing solves for.
Right.
So yeah, that's I guess covered a lot, but I guess that's essentially the elevation and the expansion are the 2 core themes that we are seeing in the market here, and that's what we're advising our clients about.
Right. Thank you so much. I think that was an explosion of ideas. And yes, I can see the, data-backed approach and analytics to all of the points that you're saying. It kind of stems from that mentality. And Dentsu also stands, that's one of the core values of Dentsu. So I can totally see that. But so going back to the first point that you talked about, right? Driving creativity through data and analytics. I think that's a very interesting one, because right now currently we're at that stage where machine learning can drive sort of analytics and like prediction and things like that, but creativity is something that's not, you can't get it from a machine. You can't expect, at this point at least, we're not so advanced that we can expect a machine to maybe, draw a painting that will evoke emotions. So how do you think this creativity, how would data help in this creative aspect? Could you elaborate a little bit more there?
Yeah, very good point. In fact, one of my Dentsu colleagues who works in DX, Phil Adrian, he recently wrote a brilliant piece on, creativity, the rise and importance of creativity in today's digital world. And I think what he spoke about was, I think for the foreseeable future, the human mind is magical. And I think the big ideas that kind of synergize the big core ideas of a brand with a creative message, I think the big campaign ideas, they are likely to still come from humans. I think where we will see both incremental as well as quantum jumps in terms of efficiency is, for example, I'll give you a couple of examples. I think one is you can use machine learning and technology to do ad sequencing. So assuming I
Yeah.
have a big campaign idea for airlines, today what you would see is, if when a campaign goes on flight, the same message on the same banner follows me for the next 2 months without accounting for creative fatigue. And it's not telling me a story. It's still giving me that offer that, hey, Bombay to Goa, Indigo, whatever, this price or this offer, right?
Mhm.
Or even if it's a branded message, it's the same imagery. What we are seeing, and we are doing this live for a particular airline brand, is, once we realize that, okay, what, my target audience is Ria, and once I better understand what Ria's profile or preference is, and again, this is demography is just one small little way to do that. There is psychography, there is your contextual behavior online. We
Right.
can, a step number one is, can we make a creative persona of you? Who are you really? What is it that matters to you? Once we know that, then we figure out the story to tell you. Maybe the story to tell you is about a backpacking trip, right? So the same Bombay to Goa message for you is backpacking trip, but for me, maybe it's a corporate trip that I want to plan for my Happy Tribe in Happy Marketer, right? So it's still the Bombay to Goa flight, but the messaging is very different, and the creative sequencing. So what we have done very well using certain digital tools is we have sequenced the message. So for Ria, if it's a backpacking, maybe the first one is about backpacking, just the idea of backpacking. The second one is about the challenges of backpacking. The third one is about maybe three things you must carry. So it's engaging you with a story, but in a sequence. So even if the ads are following you, hopefully over a 2 month period, it's telling you a narrative and a story. And likewise for the corporate message, there's a story. So creative sequencing is a big part where machine learning and technology can help
Mm-hmm.
bring that creative message, the core creative idea to life. The other is, of course, I think the fancy word that we keep hearing about in the industry, dynamic creative optimization. I think if done well, there's a lot of merit there where the creatives are literally created on the fly. So the core message is again agreed upon, but where should the logo appear? What color should it be? What should the size of the banner be? Should it be a 6-second tall video, or should it be an Instagram Insta story? I think a lot of those can be decided by machines on the fly as long as the components are decided. So I think those are two realistic use cases where technology can be really leveraged. So the idea comes from humans, but technology is helping you drive efficiency and help you tell that story better to the digital audience.
Right. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So basically, we still need people out there to be creative, to come up with the actual video or images. It's, we are using data as a supplement to make that more efficient and personalized in a way. So that's sort of just summing up your point, right?
Yeah.
One other topic that you talked about, which was pretty new for me, was the concept of zero budgeting, right? Or principle based budgeting, as you called it. I think you mentioned that there are three ways that people come to when they're making a plan. One is like driven by gut, the other one is driven by past performances, and the third one being attribution, which is one of the topics you're passionate about. Can you walk me through what does a zero budgeting plan look like, and how would somebody start who's probably not aware of these concepts?
Yeah, no, it's a good one. So, if you look at how do people, a lot of clients come to us saying, hey, how much should I spend on marketing? It's a very interesting and a difficult question. So one way that people do it is to say, hey, you know what, let's look at industry benchmarks. So they would typically look at data from research firms, from Google, Facebook, and say, hey, how much do companies in my industry spend? So maybe you get an absolute number that, hey, companies of your size in your industry, in your market spend $1 million. The other way is to say a lot of people decide based on their revenue, right? So say, okay, you know what, I'm going to spend 5 to 10% of my top line revenue on marketing, and maybe 50% of that will be spent on digital, right? That's one. A lot of the younger startups, instead of revenue, because they may not have revenue yet, they probably decide that, okay, if I've raised $100 million of funding, you know what, in the next 5 years, I'm going to use 20% of that on sales and marketing. So you have to, there is some sort of when you're starting off, there's some sort of a percentage base, and it's percentage of either revenue or funding or, some benchmarking data. But now that's the starting point. But now let's say you've been running. So right, let's again, I'm going back to my banking and insurance client. They've been running campaigns, and their typical way of deciding on, how much should I spend next year and where should I spend is based on, unfortunately, not much on logic, but a lot on gut feeling, a lot on what the media planner from the agency side might just use his or her research, secondary research, and gut feeling, and put it in an Excel sheet, saying, hey, you know what, I think you should spend 20% on SEO, 30% on media. And sometimes you don't know. Maybe the agencies have biases, or maybe they have certain deals already cut out, and hence there's a bit of bias. The zero-based budgeting principle says fundamentally that every year when you're starting, you're literally starting from zero, which means you're not looking at your past performance necessarily, right? So let's say last year you spent $1 million on marketing. That does not, most organizations will say, okay, last year we spent $1 million, our company grew by 20%, so maybe 10%, let's increase our marketing. So, okay, we're going to spend 1.1 million. But zero-based budgeting says not really. You don't have to do that. It has to be objective-based. Let's think for this year, what's our sales ambition? What's our revenue growth? What does the macro environment look like? Maybe it's COVID, or maybe there is a massive opportunity. So based on objective of what do I really want to achieve, let's work backwards and then decide our marketing budget, which could be 500,000 compared to last year's million, or which could be 5 million. Because the whole goal is, let's not add incremental marketing spends. Let's not make last year's spends the baseline, but let's rather think of the business objective. So to me, that has always worked better because, I am not basing it on history. Because again, as they say, right, and I think the funny example of insurance ads, that past performance is not a good predictor of future performance. So same way, I think marketing spends need not be a function of last year's spends. It has to be a function of what do I want to achieve this year. And there, when you're looking, I think attribution can support you. Data-driven attribution can at least tell you that, hey, sure, last year you spent $1 million. Based on this year's objective, you want to spend $2 million. That's cool. But where should you break that total budget into what buckets? I think attribution has a role to play there. Because there you can use data-driven attribution to say, you know what, you thought display ads, you were spending 40% of your total 1 million on display ads. But attribution says that, you know what, it didn't really work that well. I think you should cut it down to 20%. So from this year's 2 million, you'll probably only spend 20 on display. So attribution, zero-based will help you get to a good starting point based on your business objective. I think attribution can help you decide on the budget allocation into which buckets should you spend on based on historical data-driven analysis of what worked and what didn't work.
Right. Okay, I got it. So it's basically instead of using your historic performance as a starting point for your budgets, you rather use, the goals that you have for the business and use the historic data for your each channel split, or, how are you going to distribute cost and efficiency over there. Makes sense. Makes a lot of sense. All right. So I think a lot of our talks are revolving around, how marketing is sort of changing even as a department, and your ideas of how the role should sort of expand and what a CMO should do and the marketing department should look like. I'm very interested to know what do you think is the new age requirements for somebody to be a successful marketer? Like you said right before, it was more about communication and probably nitty-gritties of marketing campaigns, whether they know how to use a tool or something of that sort. What do you think should be the new qualities? Maybe analytics, maybe how to drive creativity through data visualization. So what do you think are requirements, and what are some things that new marketers can certainly work on to be successful in this industry?
Yeah. So I have this philosophy that for not just marketers but in general for us folks in our careers as professionals, there's a concept called polymath. In fact, there's a book that I would definitely recommend to the audience to read. One is Range and one is Polymath. Both talk about the emergence of generalists. I think, previous era, maybe in our parents' era, I think there was, if you look at most fields, they would talk about going deep and specializing. But now, a lot of history and research is showing that there is a lot of value for humans to be generalists, because machines will and are likely to get better at being specialists. So, a machine over the next 20 years, a machine is way more likely to be way more accurate when it comes to analytics, etc. So the actual number crunching, the analysis, or even the data visualization of it, and like you said, maybe in 20 years, they could take the visualization and make it into a brilliant video as well. So I think machines will get great at in-depth elements. I think where humans are great, and these concepts talk about, is two things. One is humans are great at the antithesis of analysis, which is synergizing. So it's about connecting the dots. So instead of analyzing and breaking down, it's synthesizing. That's the word I was looking for. Is how do you connect dots and synthesize to tell a better story? Or how do you synthesize and look at patterns and figure out a course of action? So I think it is very, very critical, I feel, in today's fast-moving world, that all of us come with a mixed bag of skills which make us very good generalists or good polymaths, where we can do it's funny. It's literally the reversal of jack of all trades, right? Master of none. In fact, I'm literally proposing that there is a lot of value in being a jack of all trades, as long as you're able to connect those different trades and synthesize a story and figure out the next steps. So if I bring it to marketing, I think the skills that I would really focus on, one is having being able to empathize with customers and audiences, trying to understand who the audience is, what is it that they want, what is it that they don't want. I think machines are still not great at doing that, because you still need some emotion and empathy to do that. So that empathy, and I think a lot of school curriculums I see in international schools, at least, they're driving towards trying to develop that skill of empathy. It's a soft skill, right? You can't learn it through textbooks. So I think that skill of empathy-driven research, I think, is an important one. The other one is being able to read, interpret, analysis, and to be able to synthesize and tell a better story. So I'm not really proposing that we get better at number crunching and Excel or do visualization. I think we've already seen machines are far better than us. But how do I take that and tell a narrative depending on who the audience is? How do I modulate my voice? How do I figure out my body language? Again, a lot of soft skills, right? To be able to tell stories. The third that I would say is a field that is fairly nascent, but I'm seeing a lot of marketers leverage this field, which is a field called behavioral economics. In fact, Ogilvy recently did a day-long, 24-hour-long event in the UK, which was broadcasted live around, I think the event was called Nutstock.
Yeah.
It was fantastic to see that marketers finally openly talk about how important behavioral economics is. And I've become a big fan of this, because I think this fundamentally shifts the logic of economics, where traditional economics believe that humans are rational, but behavioral economics believes just the opposite, that we humans are anything but rational, but we make irrational choices. But we like to justify our choices rationally after we purchase or after we make those choices. So I think behavioral economics, using nudges, using those techniques, I think I would definitely recommend the marketers of the future. So if I summarize behavioral economics, being able to synthesize and tell better stories, and of course to begin with, to be able to empathize with human beings, to understand what their needs are. I think those are three things. And if you see the pattern there, these are softer skills, more generalist skills, probably not one that one can, skills that one can learn and pick up from School of Arts and Social Sciences, literature, language, as opposed to technical skills. Because I genuinely believe, of course, if one wants to go into R&D, product development, by all means, going into computer engineering and industrial design, etc., is great. But I think, to be better marketers in the next 20, 30 years, the design thinking process, the storytelling, the behavioral economics process, and being able to kind of synthesize, I would probably put my money there.
Yeah, those are really good points. Especially, I think a lot of marketers have started realizing that empathizing with their audiences and their consumers is super, super important. And now I can see a lot more marketers indulge in, doing surveys and finding out about their core customers, like, like you were saying about first party data. But I love the third point about behavioral economics, because I think as marketers, people think economics is a completely different subject and there's nothing that it has to do with marketing, whereas economics has everything to do with marketing, because economics is like a large scale theories based on individual behaviors. And I was there in that festival as well, Nutstock. I was so happy it was free and I could attend it, and that was honestly one of the most enriching experiences I've had compared to all of my paid sessions that I've done over the course of COVID. Like, because even some simple concepts over there, right, about how you, like you said, we are irrational consumers. And every time I think when we're designing marketing campaigns, we take that assumption that, whatever the consumer is saying is what they mean. That's exactly how they behave, and this is exactly how it's going to be, whereas it's never the case. So it's really nice to have sort of that research, then still talk to your consumers and know sort of the drawbacks of, maybe they're saying this, it might not be exactly how they're saying it, and then sort of pull it together with a narrative, is sort of the message that I got from what you just said. Really excellent points. All right. I think I'll just move on a bit to a little bit more about your personal life. I find it very inspiring, the amount you have achieved in such a small period of time. I feel, you've worked in the government, and from government to an entrepreneurial experience is, in my head, like two extremes. So tell me about how is that journey, going from government to being an entrepreneur?
Yeah, I think one thing that I've learned in my life is never to say never. And like I started the session saying, it's important to kind of be positive and have an open mind and, be optimistic. And I think that's probably how life has panned out so far. Is I think as long as one has an open mind, because the world's constantly changing. And I've spoken about this earlier where, obviously I come from a family, I think like most of us, where obviously education was very important. But I think if there's one thing that really, has made me whatever little I am, is it's that power of curiosity and wanting to know more and solve problems. And coupled, I think from my father, probably I got that a lot. Is how do you be curious? How do you find out? How do you solve problems? From my mother's side, I think I got the elements of emotional quotient. How do you connect with people? How do you network? Mm-hmm. So I think those ingredients were there. But truth be told, I think I was till my college days, I was in the path towards, a typical engineering degree. Probably would have, joined one of the IT firms back in 2004-5. But a couple of things happened. I think so. Like I said, I moved from Indonesia, did my high school, came to Singapore. So I think one major trigger point was, when I was doing my computer engineering in year 2, NUS launched, my university, NUS launched a program called Minor in Technopreneurship. So whilst my major degree is in computer engineering, my minor is in technopreneurship, in which we were the guinea pig batch, where Singapore basically said, we're going to start teaching these geeks and techies the power of new business development and entrepreneurship and marketing. Much later, I realized this was the government's push to drive entrepreneurship in Singapore. Mm-hmm. Till I think the late 90s, Singapore. And when I say entrepreneurship, I mean it in the startup tech world as we know it. Singapore has always been a trading hub. There have been businesses of all kinds. But, Singapore kind of last 20 years has been pushing very heavily on the tech startup or the biotech startup ecosystem. So I think that opened my eyes that, wow, for all my life, I believed that there was nothing else in life apart from engineering. But the very fact that in college, suddenly we could spend half of my time in those modules, of marketing. That's the first time I got a taste of what marketing or business development or product development is. So that was in the back of my head. Wow, maybe someday I could apply this. And then I think when I after I graduated, I had 6 or 7 offers, and one of them was the government. And I was very inspired because, again, as a kid growing up, I'm a big fan of history. So I used to read a lot, and I read about Singapore and its history and how it went from third world to first world in 3 decades. How Lee Kuan Yew changed the country. So when the government offer came, that was very interesting. And I said, you know what, this is very unusual. It is not the highest paid offer that I had, but I think this is unique. So I went that path. And I can't tell you how numbing or how mind-boggling that opportunity was, because the Singapore government operates like a company. It operates like a profit and loss department, clean, transparent, meritocratic, and very efficient. And it literally believes in pushing younger folks like us when we join into the deep end. So 6 months down the road, my first assignment was, take a delegation of 20 companies from Singapore to the US. So you're representing the country and a particular industry, and you have to speak to ambassadors and commercial attaches and so on and so forth. So the very fact that you're pushed into the deep, you have no choice either to sink or swim. And I believe most humans typically find a way out. So I think the government experience was definitely it allowed me to network. It allowed me to network at a very different level compared to what I would have if I had joined the IT firm. And one thing I learned during that journey was a senior of mine told me that whatever that you do in life, whichever organization that you join, always be in the heart of the organization. Don't join the limbs and the legs. And that has always stayed with me. And I spoke about this in my previous podcast that, so when I was in the government, I wanted to be at the forefront. Then when I left the government and I said, I want to try private sector, and I joined a brand consulting firm, and then I got my hands dirty in digital when I joined a well-known Indian digital company, Pinstorm, in Singapore as head of sales. I always wanted to be client-facing. So I said, I soon realized that any business, whether it's selling fashion or makeup or selling machinery, ultimately is driven by a simple formula: profit equal to revenue minus cost. It doesn't matter what business you are in. And I wanted to be at the forefront, which means I wanted to either drive revenue or reduce cost. And I realized that I think my nature, my skill sets, my interests, they all push me towards client-facing roles or sales roles. So I think when Strategy.com, the brand consulting firm, and the Pinstorm role happened, I think that was a pivotal moment. I realized that, wow, after a public sector experience where I was doing public policy work, industry development work, and then when I could do sales, I think I've always prided or looked up to salespeople, because I realized that, it takes a lot of courage to hear no's every day. It takes a lot of courage to wake up after hearing the no's the next day, knowing that you'll hear 9 no's before you get 1 yes. And I think it's not just about the money, it's about the skill set of being at the forefront, talking to customers, educating them, understanding what they want, what they don't want. That whole process makes it very real. So when I went through that so-called baptism of fire through the public policy, networking, speaking at the government level, and the sales, account management, client-facing opportunity at the private sector level, I think that's when it gave me a confidence that, whatever that I learned in college during technopreneurship, I think it's time to, bring whatever I learned in the books to real life. And of course, all of this is theory if opportunity would not come. And opportunity came when my classmate Rachit Dayal, who I met in NUS on day one, he's the true blue entrepreneur. He's one of my fewer friends who, after college, he did not even sit for placement. He started on as a freelancer. In fact, he's the original founder of Happy Marketer. And so he reached out to me saying, hey, dude, you know what? You're doing Pinstorm. You're doing well as a salesman in the digital world. Why don't we combine forces and do this together? So it's a question of being open to what life throws at you, making the most of it, controlling variables that are in your control, learning new skills. And then when opportunity comes, hopefully one can take that. So when, Rachit gave me that opportunity, it wasn't easy. It took me 6 months to convince myself and my family, because, there's always this question is, hey, you have a good corporate job, you're 28, the typical path would say do an MBA. But there was an interesting opportunity. So I said, hey, you know what? I can always get a corporate job or always do an MBA later. Let's go about this. So that's honestly, a lot of this is accidental or serendipitous. But as they say, right, accident and serendipity also happens if you're open to opportunities. So I think I am a big believer in what Steve Jobs said in that 2005 commencement speech that he gave, that you can eventually connect the dots. So, but when you're looking forward, just keep trying, follow your gut, keep doing what you think gives you joy and josh and that, fun element. Eventually, somewhere the dots will connect. So, I suppose in my 15 years, and now in hindsight, in hindsight, everyone's a visionary. You can connect the dots. But I think the message would be really to control variables in your control. Focus on your skill set. Don't chase money and titles in your early years. That's the biggest mistake. I think that's one drawback of our culture is we focus a lot on paper degrees, on titles and money. I really, really think the first 10, 15 years should be about you, your skill sets, what brings you joy.
Yeah, that's an awesome lesson. And I got a similar message, when I read Catalyst. I don't know if you're aware of the book. So it had such a great message. I think it has to be one of the best books I've read on, career. And in the first half, it's all about when you're young, don't go after the money or the degree, you rather go after the learning and actually understand, like synthesize everything that you have learned and fail fast. How do you do this all? Like you are an angel investor in a bunch of other companies. You're handling such a big position here. And I know you love parenting your kid because I see it on LinkedIn all the time. So how do you really do this all, having this entrepreneur lifestyle plus having a family and just managing it all? And from what I hear from you, you also read up a lot on things outside of your industry and just general stuff, so you're updated about that too. So how do you manage to do it all?
More than the how, to be honest, the important part is the why, as to why do I do this. And again, this is always inside me, but I think when I read a particular book by a gentleman called Simon Sinek, Start with the Why, and I saw his TED video, he helped me articulate that. And I realized that in most cases, whether as a marketer, when you're selling or marketing a product, what's important is to tell the customer why. Why should you do business with you? Why should you buy my soap? Right? Mm-hmm. And the same goes to your question. It is more the why. So I think, I think the why for me is, if I look at life, look at people around me, I think there's always a solemn realization is that, life is relatively short, 70, 80, maybe 100 years, but maybe only about 30, 40 years of, I guess, youth or productive life. Hopefully our older days, thanks to technology, will be better. But so there is this core philosophy of, that for those 30, 40 years that I'm here, what is it that I can do with and for others? And again, like I told you, right? Is money not important? Absolutely, money is important because money gives you options in life. But I genuinely believe in the philosophy that if you start chasing that, it'll move away. It'll run away from you. I think it's important to keep in mind that find that ikigai, find what gives you passion and joy. Money will follow. It's a good side effect. But absolutely, money is extremely, extremely important because without money, you don't have options. You can't do things. So I think it's that why of, for me, what mattered is that, when I started thinking about the why, it's that juxtaposition of that ikigai kind of became, these frameworks help you articulate these things which are already inside you. So what I realized that matters to me is, it's I think I always talk about my health and my peace of mind. I think that's most important. It's my ambition to make an impact. It's again going back to that point of always being in the heart of an organization or an industry. And can you make an impact? Can you make an impact to your company, your family, your community, your condo, or your country? I think that element of making an impact and leaving a legacy, I think, is the next big driver. And the third is, of course, the economics, the money, right? So when I think of these three together, I think honestly, when I analyze myself, I think it's that juxtaposition of these three things that drives me to do whatever I do. And I must say, I'm not a very structured, planned person. So unlike a lot of my colleagues, unlike Rachit, my colleague, who's very structured, very calendar driven, mine is very gut feeling, passion, josh driven. But I think, if that why is internally clear, I would like to believe that you end up acting in your best interest. So I think most important is to get that why clear as to why am I doing what am I doing, and or why am I not doing what I should be doing. If you have that clear, I think productivity, efficiency, they all fall into place. Because to be honest, and I'm really grateful and fortunate that for the last 10 odd years, I don't really feel that I've work, because I don't think of clocking my 8 hours or 10 hours. It doesn't matter, because anyway we are in a flexible work hours. For example, tomorrow I might take a break and go with my family to the zoo, but doesn't matter. I'll come back and figure out. So I think work should not feel like work. So again, many people have different philosophies on this. They like to draw boundaries between work and home, especially in today's environment. But I don't know. I've not been that person. To me, it's very fluid. To me, I'm one person. Whether I'm a happy marketer or working at Dentsu or I'm with my child, for me, life is very fluid and intermingled. So one minute I could be playing Jenga with him, or one minute I could be, getting back to a Zoom call or a webinar. But I think the underlying element is, be it angel investing, be it running a company, be it advising companies, be it spending time with family or doing some charitable work, perhaps it stems from that impact, the monetary element, and peace of mind and health. I think over time, again, if I was a 23-year-old, I don't think I would have had that clarity. But today, when I look back and when I read these frameworks, I think they kind of help me articulate this.
Yeah, great message. Yeah, I think once you know your why, you also figure out your how, because it seems that much more important. So it's best you start with the why. Great message. I think with that message, I will end this podcast. It was amazing having this conversation with you and having this time to pick your brain and learn so many new things. I'm so glad I got this opportunity.
No, and thank you so much. Like I said, every such conversation really helps one find and learn more things about oneself, and also, through you. For example, it's really great to know that you two attended Nuts Talk. That it's good. You mentioned about Catalyst. It's in my bookshelf, but again, it's criminal of me not to read it yet. So I will definitely go and read it. So it's really, hopefully, as the podcast goes out and hopefully we have more engagements and questions. It's, to me, this is what really drives me again. Is this kind of fuels me at the end. It's 10:40 right now, but it's that what did I learn something? Did I meet someone new? Did I learn something? So yeah, hopefully this podcast has been useful. Thank you once again for the opportunity, and yeah, wish you all the best. Hope you get many more interesting guests who can educate and entertain us.
Thank you so much.